All right, here we go. Here's part seven. This is some more things that kind of get us mad enough to want to declare our independence from Great Britain and actually fight a war, the Revolutionary War, to break away from them and become our own country, to become the United States of America. Okay, so here's a couple of the things that lead up to the American Revolution. So one of the first things, remember, no taxation without representation. Do not want that. Okay, 3 years following the Boston Massacre, we're pretty quiet in the 13 colonies. A lot of historians call that the calm before the storm kind of thing. I think there was so many redcoats in Boston that people didn't really want to mess with them anymore. They were a little scared of maybe they would get shot too, like the Boston Massacre. I think the redcoats were kind of walking on thin ice too with the colonists. Things were just kind of, a little bit calm there for a couple years from 1770 to 1773. All right, but then some more things happened. All right, a couple of the the different tax acts. The Stamp Act was repealed. Sugar Act was repealed. The Townshend Acts were repealed. And the Townshend Acts were the ones on lead and paint and paper and all that kind of stuff. And tea, all of them are repealed except the tax on tea. Okay, so this probably gives you an idea where we're heading here at the Boston Tea Party, right? Repealed, remember, that means the taxes were basically canceled, done away with, except for tea. Tea was the big drink of everybody in the colonies. Okay, it was more than coffee. Everybody loved to drink tea. It was the English, the British kind of thing to do. Um, so they repeal the Townshend Acts except for the tea tax. And what they're going to do is they try to give a monopoly on tea to the East India Tea Company, Britain's chief tea producer. Okay, a monopoly. You've played the game Monopoly before, but do you really know what it means? Monopoly is somebody to have complete control of a product or service in a certain area by a single person or group. Okay, and that controls the pricing and the competition and all that kind of stuff like that. It would be like if all the different cell phone carriers, Sprint, Verizon, T-Mobile, whoever else, if they all joined together in one big company and became one company, then that would be a monopoly, because then there's no choice. Then they can control the price, they can do whatever they want to with availability, all that kind of stuff like that. So that's a monopoly. And Britain, basically, because they controlled the colonies, said, guess what? We own this big stake in this thing called the East India Tea Company, and we want them to have basically a monopoly over all this tea coming into the colonies. And so therefore they could charge what they wanted and stuff, and they could drive other people out of business if they make the price low enough. Another example of a monopoly, 10, 15 years ago, when satellite radio, back then there was Sirius satellite radio and there was XM satellite radio, and they wanted to merge together into one company. Sirius was going to buy out XM, and the government stepped in and said, no, 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 that'll cause a monopoly. They can't do that. But they were able to argue and say, well, listen, we're satellite radio. People have to pay for us. You still get free radio in your car if you want to listen to regular radio stations. So it wouldn't be a monopoly because people have the choice of whether they want to pay for radio or not. So they were able to do it. But a monopoly, normally you're not allowed to do that kind of thing. We have government agencies that try to keep people from forming monopolies with big businesses. Okay, so there's kind of what a monopoly is. Nearpod, you drive me crazy. Come on. There we go. Okay. So here's just a representation of a colonist there looking at a big sign put up about the tea tax. Not really a lot. I think it was only like 3 cents per pound of tea. And if you know, like all the more tea weighs, a pound of tea, that would be a lot of tea and only 3 cents on it. But again, it's not the tax that ticks people off. It's the fact that we don't have representation in British Parliament, and that we're being taxed without representation. Okay? Here's a political cartoon from back then. It was been put in a paper. And it basically depicts the members of Parliament here, the kind of rich looking dudes, holding down, this is supposedly like Lady Liberty back here crying, and this is like a colonist, and basically doing bad things to them, pouring tea down their throat. And we're going to see this thing here, the Boston Port Bill. That's another bad thing. And kind of like just doing things that they shouldn't be doing. So this was like how people felt about what was going on back then. All right, didn't make them happy. Here's different kinds of loose leaf tea. Guys, I wish we were in class together because I'd do my Boston Tea Party, and I bring in tea and we drink warm tea, but can't do it now, so that stinks. Okay, East India Tea Company was able to sell tea for much cheaper, and the colonial merchants could no longer make money in their tea trades. So a lot of the tea merchants went out of business, and a lot of the colonists decided to boycott drinking this English tea. Some of them tried to drink like sassafras tea and different teas out of different things, but it wasn't as good as the regular tea that they would get. Okay. Boston colonists did not want these ships loaded up with British tea from the East India Tea Company to dock in their ports. Okay, but the British government basically said you have to. You ordered the ships to let them dock in their harbors and be unloaded. So that clip where the dude got tarred and feathered, the tax collector, John Hancock, was basically saying, we've got this foul English tea on our ships. We don't want to unload it. And the guy was saying, you are bound by the law to unload them. Okay, so the Sons of Liberty, the secretive group of guys who were fighting against the British, basically, told the dock workers to refuse to unload the ships of tea. And the dock workers decided they weren't going to unload the tea. Okay, so what goes down here? We're going to learn about this little thing called the Boston Tea Party when Nearpod decides that it wants to flip a slide. Okay, the Sons of Liberty. Some of the members of this are some of our founding father guys. This is Sam Adams, who's John Adams' cousin, John Hancock, Paul Revere, a bunch of different guys. Big secretive group that basically were trying to stir things up to get everybody mad about the King of England and Parliament and things going on and the Redcoats being there in the cities and stuff. Okay, so what do? Here's the old Boston Tea Party. A lot of misrepresentations about this thing. How about we'll end this video, we'll end 7 here, and I'll come back and we'll start on the Boston Tea Party. Okay, so that's the end of 7. We'll come back and learn about the Boston Tea Party in 8.